Okay, so I kind of want to get back in our coverage over the Thunderbolts, and I kind of love the way this book is kind of going. And the reason why, because, okay, so just real quickly here, as we all know, when it came to Baron Zemo, he had this master plan to go out of his way to recruit different members of the old masters of evil and some new members as well. Now, with that being said, when he brought everyone together, he had an idea. Why not have this group right here pretend to be a group of superheroes better known as the Thunderbolts? Because at this time in Marvel Comics, the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four are no longer around. And the reason why, because they're in the Heroes Reborn reality. I'm not going to sit down and try to explain the whole idea of Heroes Reborn. But with the heroes being gone, it left the door open for a new team to come in and take their spot. Bam, you now have the Thunderbolts. But here comes the next problem, though. You see, for Baron Zemo, what he wanted to do was build up the trust in the team when it came to the public or the mayor or even the American government, so that they didn't have access to all the different things you would have heroes have if they were around. And so for the Thunderbolts, that was their main goal, to build up the trust, to get access to everything. And once they do get that access, steal everything underneath them without them actually knowing. Now, with all that being said, in the last few story arcs, we have seen the team evolve. And what I mean by that statement is the idea that now you have different characters beginning to love one another, but also beginning to love the idea of being a superhero team. And for Baron Zemo, that right there is a major problem. And before we actually explore the idea of like, okay, you know what does fresh mean? I kind of go ahead and jump over to S.H.I.E.L.D. And the reason why, because for G.W. Bridges, the guy who was in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D. around his time in Marvel Comics, he wants to know where the heck is Baron Zemo? Because the person he had assigned to watch over Baron Zemo has no idea that Baron Zemo is out in the world right now as a different character, better known as Citizen V, but also leading the new superhero team. But for GW, he wants some answers. He wants to find Baron Zemo right now at this exact moment. But I want to shift over to the Thunderbolts, and this begins the process of what I said earlier, the idea of the team evolving and Baron Zemo possibly not being happy about the idea, starting off with Atlas. And here's the reason why, because for Atlas, he's right now getting a scan done by Techno. Now, when it comes to Atlas, in Marvel Comics, different methods were used as a way to give him the different abilities he has, like for example, PIM particles. But right now, it seems like his cells are beginning to turn back to normal. Now for Atlas, this is perfect. But for Baron Zemo, this is not perfect. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for Atlas, you have him right now asking Techno if that's true. If my cells are turning back to normal, is there a possibility that I can have children? And so for Techno, he knows what that means, that Atlas is now beginning to fall in love with Dallas, who is the liaison for the team who works for the mayor. But while you have Atlas and Techno having this conversation, Baron Zemo is spying in on them, listening. And for Baron, he's not okay about the idea of Atlas falling in love. And honestly, it does not stop even there, because we also see that for Songbird and also Mach 1, better known as the Beetle, ever since the first story arc, we got the idea of those two characters beginning to fall in love with one another. And so for Baron Zemo, he now has another example of the idea of two characters falling in love, and he hates it. Now, his last and final example is the idea of Meteorite and Jolt. Now, for Jolt, she's the only member of the team that's not technically a supervillain that's right now pretending to be a hero. Now, for Meteorite, she is. But when it came to Baron Zemo, when he brought Meteorite on the team, the main goal was to use to be a therapist to kind of help guide the team in the right direction, to keep them on track. But right now, the team is falling in love with one another. They're turning more human. But he also sees that for Meteorite, she loves the idea of having Jolt around, this teenage girl who's kind of like a little sister or possibly a daughter to Meteorite. And so for Baron Zemo, he needs to have a meeting with Meteorite. And as soon as they have their meeting, right off the bat, you have Baron Zemo basically say, hey, Meteorite, I think you're trying to plot against me. I think you're trying to betray me and turn the team against me. Now, for Meteorite, she's like, wait, what do you mean by that statement? Because it was you who brought me in. It was you who sat me down and said, hey, listen, here's the game plan. You're the team therapist. Your goal right now is to lead them in the right direction. I have been trying to do that. But the problem is, you keep throwing me hurdles left and right I have to overcome. Like, for example, in our last battle, it was you who broadcast our battle to show the world who we were fighting against, but also to show off Jolt. And so now we have her on the team. We can't get rid of her. And the thing is, for Baron Zemo, he wants to get rid of her. He's like, hey, you know what? So a whole game plan where she ends up dead somehow. And it's her saying, have you lost her mind? Because if the public finds out that we allow a teenager to join our team and something happens to her, then it looks like we're unable to protect a young girl who had powers on our team. It makes us look bad. But it's then Baron finally telling her like, hey, I'm just tired of the idea of everyone falling in love with one another. You know what? We need some distractions. Now, luckily for him, a call comes in from Dallas, the liaison who works for the mayor. Now, when she calls, it's very quick. She informs the team that there was this incident with a boat, crashing. Now, at first, they believe it was a complete accident. But then they realize that's not the case, that something or some kind of creatures had attacked the boat. And matter of fact, those creatures had sent out a warning that they were going to attack the airport in New York. So of course, for our heroes, say, you know what, let's go ahead and watch out for the attack. Now, for Baron Zemo, this is perfect because what he does next is break the team into two different teams to kind of watch out in two different areas when it comes to the situation. But also it's him saying, hey, Mach 1, you're on team A. Songbird, you're on team B. Let's go ahead and begin the process of trying to break y'all two up because we can't have y'all two falling in love. You guys are slowly turning into humans, slowly falling in love, slowly turning this whole thing into some kind of family. And I cannot have that. But either way, you do have the two teams go their separate ways for this mission. Now, real quick, let me just say, I never heard of the elements of doom. Like, when I sat down and read this book, I was like, who the is this? The elements of doom are different characters who represent different chemical elements. Now, with that being said, they don't appear that many times in Marvel Comics. Matter of fact, they only appear like 9 times total, and that's really it. But when it comes to the elements of doom, they're right now doing a two-way attack. So the first attack right now is at the airport. The second one is with a plane right now in the air. So they're trying their best to crash that plane somewhere in the city. So for Baron Zemo, the idea of him saying, you know what, guys, let's break up the two teams, it actually works out here very well. Now, the second thing about this section right here that threw me off, I don't know why, but it did, is the idea of Jolt telling us that she knows the elements of doom because she read an interview that was done by Falcon in a Jet magazine. And let me tell y'all, when she said Jet magazine, I was like, man, I feel so old right now. Like, whew, throwback. Anyways, though, you do have the two teams right now trying their best to handle both situations. Now, after a few pages, you didn't have both parties or both teams being able to regroup and fight together to fight against the elements of doom. Now, this battle does last for a few pages, but once you do have our two teams come back together, you didn't have the bad guys say, hey, you know what? We got to dip out. And so, of course, they do dip out. Now, this leads into the big ending for this chapter because once you do have our heroes being able to head back to their base, well, you did have our heroes get a call from Dallas. And this call is really more her saying like, hey guys, you know what? We know the elements of doom were able to get away. It's a bad thing, but like we'll move on because at least the city is saved. Now, in an earlier storyline for Baron Zemo, he wanted the files, the Avenger files. Now, those files can help him in so many different types of ways. Like, yes, it could help the team out in the field, but also like for his own personal goals as well. And so he asked Dallas last time for the files. Shield said no. Now, she also informs him, like, listen, there's right now a battle of the idea of like who owns the file. So right now, she's unable to give this team authorization to look at those files. But for Baron Zemo, it's him putting his foot down, saying, listen, my team is out there fighting against different characters who are villains of the Avengers, and we almost died many times. I cannot have my team out there dying at all. So I need those files. Now it's him kind of playing that, small game right there where it's like, hey, I truly do care for my team. But in reality, it's him just right now trying to get what he officially wants, the files, the Avenger files. And so he tells the team, we're not going out there being heroes no more until we are able to get our hands on those files. But as we transition into the next chapter, we do pick up with, well, the Thunderbolts minus Baron Zemo sneaking out of their base because they're like, hey, listen, the elements of doom are out there right now causing havoc. Like, we got to find them, bring them down, stop them. We don't have any time to sit here and wait for some kind of file because many innocent people are going to die. And so what you have is right now the heroes, again, minus Baron Zemo, sneaking out of their base. Now, for our heroes, they're kind of like, listen, we hate the idea of going against orders, but like, we gotta protect people. They don't realize that they're being followed by Baron Zemo. So it's him right now kind of like, hey, listen, I knew you guys would do this. So I say, you know what? Let me go ahead and keep a close eye on them. But this leads into the problem of the team because without Baron Zemo being there, without the idea of some kind of leader being able to tell the team where to go or what to do or how to get some certain character, you have the team just get defeated badly against the elements of doom because when our heroes go out of their way, they find the base of the elements of doom. The elements of doom come out and say, hey, you found us? Cool. Let's go ahead and fight here and now. And the battle begins. But again, without Baron Zemo being there, for our heroes, they lose this battle. Now, Baron Zemo, he's watching every single thing happen step by step. He's kind of like, listen, I knew it was going to happen. I knew this would happen right here without me. So you know what? I'm going to sit back and watch. Now, with our heroes being captured by the elements of doom, they also meet the character's creator. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to pronounce his name because I know for me personally, I am going to mess up. But he is a character that only appeared like 3 times in Marvel Comics. This chapter, the next chapter, and then like a random Avengers book. But when it comes to this character right here, he does tell us, the readers, that he did make the first group of elements of doom. Now, the first group were humans who were given powers of chemical elements. This group right here, they're not humans. They're just creatures. And the reason why there's a change there because he realized the last group were humans who still had free will, being able to break away from his control. These creatures, he believed, will be more in order. The problem is that they say, actually, man, we don't want to follow you as our leader. We're going to take your plan, though, but we're not going to follow you. And their plans turn other people on the earth into more element people, but more like drones so that they can be controlled. And their first group is our heroes to slowly change into, well, elements of doom. Now, the last part of this chapter is pretty sad, and let me explain why. Because, okay, so for Techno, he is able to get a hold of Citizen V, Baron Zemo. And for Zemo, he tells his team, like, you need to find their creator because their creator should know a way to bring down his creations, which honestly, he is right. And the thing is, we also learned that Songbird made constructs to help her escape out of her restraintments. Once she's able to escape, you didn't have the team tell her, go ahead and find the doctor. And hopefully the doctor can tell you how to bring down his creations. Once that's done right there, come back to us. We'll stay behind and try our best to free one another. Now, while you have Songbird doing that, and you have the rest of the team trying to free one another, well, one of the members of the Elements of Doom come behind Techno, grabs him, and snaps his neck. And so for most of the team, all they see right now is a dead team member. When it comes to Songbird, she has no idea what happened to Techno. And he was guiding her in a way to go to the lab to find the creator. So without him around now, she's having a hard time figuring out where to go. Now, as we transition into the next chapter, we're now picking up with the different heroes of New York fighting against the different elements of doom on the outside of their base. And so you see Spider-Man, Daredevil, you see the New Warriors. Now I realize that I had a lot of folks asking me to sit down and cover the New Warriors. I kind of think we should cover the New Warriors. Anyways, though, while you do have all these different heroes fighting against the elements of doom on the outside parts of their base, well, inside the base, it's the Thunderbolts realizing that their teammate is officially dead. Now, when it comes to Citizen V, Baron Zemo, we see him right now having a conversation with G.W. Bridges, the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. at his time in Marvel Comics, and also, well, Dallas, the liaison. Now, for G.W. Bridges, he does approve the idea of handing over the Avenger files to, well, Citizen V. Now, the files are very encrypted, but for Baron Zemo, he believes he has a way to get through it. But finally getting back over to Songbird, Songbird still has no idea that her teammate's now dead, and so she's on her own to figure out like where to go. Now, we do see her be confronted by a couple more of Elements of Doom, gold and silver. And so we see her just go completely wild on these two characters. And honestly, I kind of love this a lot for her because I'm a huge fan of Songbird, especially when it comes to the later like volumes of the Thunderbolts. But when it comes to Songbird, once she's able to defeat gold and silver, she then continues on. While trying to move on, she remembers what they told her in the middle of the battle, that Techno, Fixer, is actually dead. And so it's her kind of wondering, is it true that her teammate, a close friend of hers, is officially dead here at the moment? But we also see that for Songbird, she was able to locate the doctor. So once she was able to locate the doctor and free him, the question is now, what is his game plan to hopefully find a way to get rid of these elements of doom? Now, they were kind of hoping to use Techno as part of this plan, but Techno's now officially dead. Except we kind of find out that for Techno, he's not dead. That matter of fact, the dude is alive and well. And let me explain how. See, when it came to Techno, before he had died, he had uploaded his consciousness into the computer system that Element of Doom had inside their base. And then after doing that, he was then able to build a robot body for himself. So Techno is alive in his own kind of special way. Now, with that being said, you didn't have the rest of the team being able to break free. Now, with the rest of the team being able to break free, that means, okay, cool, they can now officially go after the elements of doom. And when it comes to the Doctor, he does have a way to defeat all the different members of the elements of doom. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain the whole game plan. Just know that you do have our heroes being able to make it outside the actual base of the elements of doom, help the rest of the heroes of New York to bring them down. But to close in this chapter, you did have our heroes head back over to, well, their home base. And it's time for a conversation with Baron Zemo. And the dude is not happy at all. As a matter of fact, he says, if y'all do anything like that all again in the near future, I will kill you guys so badly that there's no way to find any pieces of you guys anywhere at all across this world. So a very major threat there. But at the same time, he's kind of happy. And the reason why, because with the heroes getting captured, he was then able to push to the idea of getting the Avengers files. Now, the files are encrypted, but with the idea of Techno now having a robot body, he should be able to crack things a tad bit faster, like, for example, the Avengers files. So things will get very more interesting here in a moment. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw in issue number 9 as well in this video. And the reason why, because issue number 9, it's not long enough to be its own personal video. And so I want to go ahead and add this video right here. And so in the opening pages for issue number 9, we're really seeing the Black Widow confronting two members of the Thunderbolts. And that'll be Mach 1 and also Songbird. Now, this whole entire issue is really more her telling a story about the Avengers in the past, when you had a Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and Hawkeye officially join the team. Now, this story is really important for the very end part of this issue, but getting into the actual story, you see, in that story, we have learned that when it came to the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and also Hawkeye joining the team, it was right after you had some members of the team leave temporarily. The problem was that for Hawkeye, he was known as a criminal. And so, of course, when they announced his name, you had the crowd kind of be very upset about the idea of Steve Rogers allowing this guy onto the team. Now, you had the public begin to throw things at Hawkeye, but you didn't have Quicksilver step in to protect Hawkeye. But that led into another problem. The idea that for Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch to become Avengers was pretty wild. And the reason why, because, well, they were villains. They had worked with Magneto, because back then they still believed that they were his children. But when it came to them being with Magneto, but also being mutant, they had the same kind of hatred like Hawkeye did. And so for a lot of people, they began to question Steve Rogers. Like, hey, why in the world would you choose these three characters? Now, the second half of the storyline is really more of us just seeing like Steve Rogers being kidnapped by the radioactive man. And so with that happening, you didn't have the other three realize they got to save their leader. And so they go out of their way to find the radioactive man. Now, as the battle goes on, you didn't have Steve Rogers being able to break free to help them bring down the radioactive man. Now, with all that said being done, you did have our heroes realize that the battle was taking place in a public area. So, of course, the public saw it. They're like, oh my God, it's the Avengers fighting against the radioactive man. But of course, for the public, they now saw the three characters as heroes because they saw the three fight against the radioactive man being led by Captain America. And so just like that, when it came to the public, their whole mindset changed when it came to the Avengers adding those three characters to their roster. And so the reason why you have Black Widow tell that story is because it's her saying, really kind of hinting at the idea that she knows the Thunderbolts are not really good people, that they are villains in disguises right now, pretending to be heroes. But she also tell that for Mach 1 and also Songbird, that for those two at least, they want to be heroes. They're trying their best to turn things around. And so it's her saying, you have to prove to me that you want to be heroes, because right now, I don't have enough to bring you guys down just yet. But sooner or later, I will, and I will come after all of you guys. But I believe you two will make the right choice. Bring down your boss, because that man right there is a horrible person. And the book ends on that note right there. With that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.